LA Kings fans chime in on Quinton Byfield's potential, Darcy Kuemper's season, and more on this fan feedback edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, the LA Kings are getting ready to host the Nashville Predators on Saturday, closing out this latest stretch of games as the regular season is winding down. Kings looking to continue their winning ways of late. They've won 4 in a row and looking to obviously play their best hockey as we go down the regular season here, close it out, and get into the playoffs. We'll touch on the Kings' next game, where they are on the standings now after Friday's action, and more. But we start with your feedback. It is a Kings Fan Feedback Friday, your chance to sound off, critique, praise, complain, and celebrate our Los Angeles Kings. We do it every Friday, off-season, regular season, and postseason. And let's get to our first email. And I did want to say that I saw a lot of first-time emailers this week, which is exciting. Also, we're going to put a comment I saw on YouTube out there and talk about it a little bit as well. So I will read these emails in the order in which they were received. And we start with Luke in Temecula. And he says, hello, Eddie. I'm so happy the Kings held on to Quinton Byfield, as there is so much potential there that will be unleashed in at least the next 2 to 3 years. Sending this after Byfield's overtime winner, he says in quotes. With Liam Greentree coming up in the system, an amazing AHL goalie in Eric Bertillo, a rising star defenseman in Brent Clark, I'm not too worried about just grabbing an Andrei Kuzmenko. Low risk, high reward move. What do you think? Love the shows. Keep it up. Again, that was Luke in Temecula. I went to the Kings Vegas game with one of our everydayers, Brian in Mission Viejo, and we obviously chatted during the game. And he said, will you be disappointed if the Kings don't do anything at the trade deadline? And my answer was, I'd rather the Kings do nothing than do something stupid. And I think we actually have to give Rob Blake some credit here. I know a lot of us don't like to do that. But again, this is him in the final year of his contract. It seems like his job is going to be determined by how the Kings do this postseason. You could certainly understand him wanting to do something to not only benefit the team, but potentially benefit himself. But also, the fear there is that would be a beneficial move in the short term that could end up damaging the Kings in the long term. And do you want to do something like that if you're a team that, let's be realistic, probably isn't a cup contender, right? I mean, look, the Kings haven't won a playoff series since they won it all in 2014. So I mean, is it possible if you get in the playoffs, you could win it all? Sure, it's possible. And look, the 2012 LA Kings roster and season kind of was an example of that. So that gives us some hope. But realistically, let's put it this way. If you had $5,000 and you could bet it on any team to win the Stanley Cup, would the LA Kings be the first team on your list? Right? Probably not, if we're being honest about it. So I'm glad that Rob Blake didn't do anything hasty or short-sighted, even though, again, he's in a position where you can understand why he might do something like that. I do wonder if his ties to the organization maybe keeps him from doing something like that because he was a former player here, because he lives here. And I'm sure, before he became the GM and after he becomes, when he's no longer GM, he's still going to be living in Southern California and raising his family here and all that kind of stuff. So he has ties to the organization and ties to the area. And I just think that as opposed to somebody you bring in from Pittsburgh, they're going to care a little bit more about the organization, even after they're no longer in control of it. I don't know. Maybe that's just a kind of a sentimental thought I would like to have, but maybe he's just also just being a professional and understands the responsibilities that he has. And it's not just about the Kings now. It's about how they are down the road as well. And that's part of his legacy as being the general manager of the Kings. Anyway, the point of what I'm saying is, I would have loved to have seen him maybe go out and get a guy like an Alex Tuck, but apparently the prices were sky high. And I would prefer that he do not overpay for a player who probably isn't going to be so impactful that, he's going to make the Kings a Stanley Cup contender. So I think that's the situation the Kings were in. And again, I feel good that Rob Blake kept the, vision of what's down the line for the LA Kings squarely in his mind, as well as the short term. So the Andrei Kuzmenko deal, fine. He tried to do something to help. Maybe Kuzmenko does help. I think just his presence alone and how the lines are now slotted, I think is a benefit. Whether that's going to be enough to get him out of the first round of the playoffs, obviously that remains to be seen. All right, our next email comes from Sassin Suarez. He is in Westwood, and he says, "Go Bruins," and I'm assuming UCLA, not Boston. He says that he is a new Kings fan. He says that Darcy Kuemper is having an incredible year. I believe he's single-handedly stolen a few games for the Kings, and I feel that they probably should have lost. That being said, Kuemper is under contract until 2027, at which point he will be age 37. Can we realistically expect him to produce and continue the way he has been this year? What do the Kings need to find? What do the Kings need to find their next starting goalie when it comes to the end of Kuemper's tenure in Los Angeles? With Big Save Dave, I feel like he's really struggled this year after having a very solid 2023-24. Is it too big of an overreaction to say the Kings should heavily consider moving off Rittich after this season? There's a second part to Sassin's email. He says, I have a sudden urge to play hockey at the ripe age of 30 after having never even ice skated since I was maybe 9 years old. I've just taken a learn to skate class meant for adults and signed up to learn to play at the Toyota Sports Performance Center. Do you know of any adult beer leagues in or around Los Angeles that have leagues for beginners? Do you have advice on what to look for in certain types of hockey gear? Is it a stupid idea to have a desire to play in net, or would you recommend holding off until I'm a bit more experienced? I'm thinking about making the drive down to Pure Hockey in Anaheim, having the people there help me out with a stick and gear that I need. So far, I've got a helmet with a cage, skates, and some cheap sticks. He says, also, any chance you'll be at the Caps or the Predators game? I'm planning on attending both and would love to meet up. And again, that was from Sassin. Sassin, I was at the Caps game. Unfortunately, I won't be at the Predators game, so apologize for that. But I usually get out to the Saturday games. There'll be some occasional other games. I know that we had another email coming up talking about April 1st. I will be out there for that game against Winnipeg, and I'm sure we can meet up. But first off, let's start with your question about Darcy Kuemper and Kings goaltending. I've talked about this a little bit before, and you are correct. Darcy Kuemper has 2 more seasons on his contract after this year. I think that the way he's played this year, and you're right. He is 35 now. He'll turn 35 in May, will Darcy Kuemper. So I think the way he's played this year, I think it's realistic to assume that he's got another good year left in him. And then after that, as you said, he'll be 36, 37 in the final year of his contract. And, that's about the time where you start to see a bit of a drop-off amongst goaltenders. Although Sergei Bobrovsky of the Florida Panthers just won a Stanley Cup at the age of 36. That said, Bobrovsky is a future Hall of Famer, and Darcy Kuemper is not quite that. But I think the plan for the Kings is Darcy Kuemper next year with Eric Portillo as the backup, getting the promotion from the AHL. Portillo getting a little bit more than just the second of back-to-back games or whatever. See how he handles that. And then in Kemper's final year of the contract, if Portillo is really good, maybe he takes over and Kuemper slides to the backup goalie, or maybe it's a 1A, 1B type of situation as they transition into Eric Portillo, if he is able to hold up his end of the bargain. As for you playing hockey at the age of 30, starting to play hockey at the age of 30, I didn't start to play beer league hockey until I was in my mid-20s, I think. And I didn't have any experience with either. I did play a little roller hockey, but I applaud anybody who does something like this. I love it. It's one of my favorite things, playing beer league hockey. It's so much fun, and it really helps your respect and knowledge of the game being out there, even if it is just at a lower level. You understand the game a lot more and respect the players a lot more. There are beginner leagues in Los Angeles for sure. The two rinks that I play at, Lakewood and Harbor City, both have beginning hockey leagues that you could play in, beginner level leagues. I play bronze, copper. Those leagues are called like tin and aluminum. But yes, those absolutely do exist. And get out there and play and have a blast. And I think what you're doing as far as going down to Pure Hockey in Anaheim, those people will help you out, get you to set up with all the gear. I would just say don't feel like you got to buy a $200 stick when you're first starting out. Get something that's cheap and reliable. And then once your game progresses, then you can upgrade your equipment as well. But just get kind of the basic stuff at first. And then if unfortunately maybe you don't fall in love with it, or maybe it gets to be too expensive for you, then you haven't invested a ton of money in all the equipment. But I wish you all the best of luck. Like I said, I absolutely love playing. It's a blast and it's so much fun. And along those lines, we have an email from Steve Schindler, and he says, I always enjoy your podcast, but I really enjoyed your interview with Daryl Evans. Great questions and great insights from Daryl. Love the Hockey Laces story. I'm 70 years old and still playing pickup hockey 3 times a week in Carlsbad and La Jolla in the over 50 and over 60 leagues. I'll be playing at Crypto before the Kings game on April 1st, which is a bucket list item. Keep up the great work. All the best. And again, that was Steve, apparently down in the San Diego area. So, yeah, I'll be out there at that game, Steve. Maybe we can meet up and say hello. I've skated at Staples Center after some Kings games. It's a ton of fun. It's amazing. Some things I remember: the bench, sitting on the bench. They're like, the benches are really high up because these are big guys, right? And when you're sitting on them, your skates are barely touching the floor there. If you're somebody like me who's 5'9", 5'10", they turn off the air conditioning after the I guess to save money, and it gets hot out there with those lights. I remember that, but all in all, it's a blast to be on the same ice as professional players. So very, very cool. Have a good time with that. And at the age of 70, still out there getting it done, Steve. That's awesome, man. That's really cool to hear. All right, we are just getting started with your emails. We've got some more coming up here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee, but I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it, and that's why I turned to Trade. And let me tell you, the coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste-tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or you know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. The subscription makes it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever's on the shelf. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drink, TRADE, trade.com/lockedonnhl for 50% off your first order. drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. And March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets when it's all over. I've got my eye on a few Cinderellas this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. You want to talk about an underdog? How about the UCLA Bruins? They are a plus 10,000 to win the national championship. Got a lucky feeling about the Bruins. We'll go to FanDuel and take the chance at glory. With tournament games happening almost every day, there is always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around for your payout. So visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long. Our next email comes from Billy and Desi. He says, in quotes, girlfriend, in Rialto. And it says, first email, longtime fan, long overdue. Joined the Kings train after our first Stanley Cup. Just recently became a dedicated, passionate Kings fan the past couple of years. If the Kings win the Cup, one huge reason will be Darcy Kuemper. He's been holding us down when Jim tries some of his crazy lines. Love the lines. Kuzi has been good, risky with turnovers, but love him with the vet line. That's what I'm calling them. We don't give enough credit, though, to Kuemper. When we're playing bad or having sloppy turnovers, he shows up for us. Credit where credit is due. How else can we support you besides following? Can we donate? Premium subscribers? Let us know. We'll gladly support the podcast. Love that you give us a rain report as well, as I'm from Rialto and go to a lot of Reigns games. Saw Clark, Hellenius, and Fogel go from Ontario to the Kings. Couldn't be happier for them. Go Rain, go. Go Kings, go. And that was from Billy and Desi in Rialto. We have a couple of days off coming up next week, like Tuesday and Wednesday. The Kings don't have any games. So I think we're probably going to use one of those days to get caught up on what's been going on with the Ontario Reign. Obviously, the focus lately for the last couple of weeks has really been on the Kings. And look, this is a Kings show, but I do like to keep everybody updated on what's going on in the AHL as well. So one of those days, I think we'll probably be able to do that. Also, probably check in on what the Kings prospects are doing as college teams and juniors teams are getting ready for their playoff pushes as well. And certainly agree with you with Darcy Kuemper. Has been better than I thought he would be. Not that I didn't think he would be solid. I thought he would be very solid, but he's even taken it kind of to another level. A guy that has won a Stanley Cup, and the Kings going into this postseason, I think their goaltending is probably better than it's been over the past few years, both with what this guy's accomplished in the past and what he's done so far this year. So yes, I agree. Darcy Kuemper has been really, really good for the Kings so far this year. Our next email comes from Scott in Simi Valley. He says, great to see the Kings moving into second place with a big win against the Caps. I don't like the Kings goaltending depth right now. Rittich looks shaky to me, but if Kuemper stays healthy and the Kings have home ice in the playoffs, I give them a very good chance against any team. On the road, not so much, but I think the Oilers are going down this time if the Kings have home ice. As for Q, man, what a player he's developed into. I think if Q can work on his stick handling a bit and also his faceoffs, he's going to be an absolute beast. He'll average 25 to 35 goals yearly and will be all that Kopi has been and more. We'll see, but I believe his ceiling is very high. He's still just 22. Looks like the Kings have a good one in Q. Thanks, Eddie. And that was Scott in Simi Valley. I would still kind of hold off a little bit on look, I'm excited about Quinton Byfield, especially what he's done of late. You're right. He is still young. He is still developing. Seems to be heading in the right direction. But before we start comparing him to be, the next Anze Kopitar or more, I mean, we're talking about, in my opinion, the greatest king of all time in Anze Kopitar. Let's let him have one solid season first, like a consistent, no big ups and downs, solid 25 to 30 goal season, 60 maybe to 70 point season, something like that. And once he establishes himself, you're like, okay, now we can start to really get excited about it. But again, I am optimistic. I like where it's going. And I've always felt that he was going to turn into a very, very good player, but we still need to pump the brakes a little bit on that. Ed in Brea checks in, and I do want to let you know that Ed continues to do amazing work with his guarantees, as he did guarantee that the Kings would lose to the Golden Knights and the Capitals recently. And of course, they won both those games. So Ed, continue to keep doing God's work and continue to use your powers for good. But here's what Ed had to say. He says, Darcy Kuemper has been consistent, a Jordan Bennington type, not elite, but good, with a cup win and a world championship, solid goalie. Then it says, I have a trivia question for you. Something different. Name the only NHL team today that does not have a mascot. If you know the answer, answer it. If not, I will say next week. Okay. I actually am a bit of a mascot nerd. So I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this. And I'm assuming you're also talking about, when you say mascot, you mean like the person in the furry outfit that, runs around like Bailey, like our guy over Bailey over here. And if you're watching on YouTube, a picture of me and Bailey in the cup back there, one of my favorite photos. So the Flyers, I don't believe ever had a mascot until they got Gritty a few years ago, that big orange blob guy. So I believe that the answer to your question is the New York Rangers. I do not believe the New York Rangers have ever had a mascot. However, I think the Detroit Red Wings, though, also should fall into that category because they do not have a person running around in a suit. And to me, that's what a mascot is. Now, they do have a giant octopus that they lower down onto the ice and they skate out of it when they come onto the ice to start a game and maybe between periods as well. That's not a mascot though to me. Like the San Jose Sharks do that. I think they still do that. They skate out of the shark head, but they do have a guy in a shark suit too, SJ Sharky. I don't believe the Red Wings do either. So I think the answer is actually the Rangers and the Red Wings. I think there's actually two teams that do not have an actual mascot. I've got one more message I want to read here, or it wasn't an email. It was sent on YouTube. This comes from Philip, and I'm going to give a shot at the last name, Kamhi, Kamhi. And Philip checks in on YouTube, and he commented, and it caught my attention. He says, thanks for the show. I want to give you a note that I think the expectation for 4 shots each game for Kuemper and Fiala is too stiff. This season, only 3 players in the NHL have done this. I think 3 shots is a more realistic target. Last season, Fiala had 2.74 shots on net per game. Kuemper had 3.9. Neither of them is coming close to 4. Okay, Philip, I think it's a great point. And you got me curious. I wanted to know who are the 3 players that are averaging 4 or more shots on goal per game. And at least according to what I found on StatMuse, there's actually 4 players right now in the NHL that are averaging 4 or more shots on goal per game. And there's some pretty big names here. David Pastrnak, Brady Tkachuk, Nathan McKinnon, and Austin Matthews. Those are all superstar players. I agree with you that I think saying 4 shots on goal each per game for Fiala and Kuemper is setting a high bar, but I'd rather set the bar high and have them come up just short than the other way around. So in other words, it's like telling someone, I want you to do X amount. And if they don't quite get there, but they're close, then you're more than happy with that. So instead of, I think you're totally right. I think 3 per game is much more realistic, but I'd rather have it be higher to kind of just send the message to what we're expecting from you. And that's shoot the puck as often as possible. Anytime you get a good scoring chance, put the puck on net. So you're correct. And I agree with your point, but I still like setting the bar a little bit higher than maybe is realistic. All right, the LA Kings, unfortunately, are no longer in second place. We'll update the Pacific Division standings and tell you about their next game against the Nashville Predators. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? I definitely do that. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. By the way, it was asked, nobody's ever asked me before, how can they support me with a donation? That was Billy and Desi in Rialto asked about that. I really appreciate the thought. Definitely subscribe, download, and tell people, if you could, word of mouth, tell your Kings friends about the podcast. Tell them you like it. Tell them to support if you can. As far as any donations or anything, I don't really have anything. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should set up a Patreon page to help me out a little bit, since I don't have a full-time job right now. But I don't know. I'll look into that. But I definitely appreciate the sentiment about that. And I want to say, of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to email and to message. This feedback show literally is not possible without your participation. All right. I did want to get you updated on what's the situation in the Pacific Division right now. Unfortunately, the LA Kings are no longer in second place. They were only there for a day, but they could be right back there if they can win on Saturday. But in the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights are still on top, 85 points, record of 39-19-7. They will play Saturday in Buffalo against the Sabres. The Oilers were winners Friday night. They beat the Islanders 3-2 in overtime. So Edmonton picks up 2 points. They've got 80 points now on the season. one more than the LA Kings, so they move back into second place in the Pacific, record of 38-24-4. The Kings are 1 point behind the Oilers for that second spot and home ice advantage in the playoffs. Kings 35-20-9 for 79 points. If they can beat the Nashville Predators, get 2 points, they will move right back in front of Edmonton and back into second place Saturday night. So hopefully there's that's some motivation for the Kings to get a big win. The Kings still have 2 games in hand on the Oilers and still have 2 head-to-head matchups against the Oilers as well. And I did want to mention the Calgary Flames. They lost to the Avalanche on Friday. 4-2 was the final, so they do not gain any ground against the Kings as far as trying to track them down for third place, which I think is probably not realistic. But 71 points for Calgary, 30-24-11 on the season. So 8 points behind the Kings in the standings. Did want to mention the Nashville Predators, the Kings' next opponent, did lose tonight in Anaheim to the Ducks. 2-1 was the final. So Nashville was riding a 4-game winning streak. That has now come to an end after a loss in Anaheim. So back-to-back games for the Nashville Predators. That takes us to the Kings' next game, Saturday against the Predators. Kings will be wrapping up a stretch of games where they played 5 of 6 at home and looking to win 5 in a row with a victory over the Predators. Told you, move back into second place as well if you could do that. As for a real quick scouting report on the Predators, they are one of the bigger disappointments in the NHL this season. They made some huge offseason additions, bringing in Steven Stamkos, a future Hall of Famer, captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning, multiple Stanley Cup winner. They also brought in Jonathan Marchessault from the Vegas Golden Knights. He won a cup in Vegas, was the Conn Smythe Trophy winner as playoff MVP. Couple of marquee forwards joining guys like Philip Forsberg and their defenseman Roman Josi. They've got a good goaltender in UC Saros, and it just has not worked out at all. For whatever reason, they have been well below expectations this year. Matter of fact, only 2 teams in the Western Conference have fewer points than the Nashville Predators. That's the San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks, 2 teams that are firmly in a rebuild. So it has not been a good year for the Predators. They're playing out the string here. And this is a good opportunity for the Kings to get 2 points. The Kings are better than this team. This is a very winnable game. Obviously, Nashville is capable. I mentioned they just had a 4-game winning streak, but back-to-back games for Nashville, playing a very good Kings team in their arena where they've been one of the best teams in the NHL. It's a very winnable game. And as great as the Kings win was over the Capitals, if they come back the next game and lose to a team that's really struggling like Nashville, it almost kind of cancels it out. So I've talked about this before. When you're a good team, you don't care who the opponent is. You play to your standard every game, and you don't play up or down to your opponent. Now, that's not totally realistic. Obviously, you're going to really be excited to play Vegas, Edmonton, Washington, those kind of teams. Not as much against the Islanders or, like that. I mean, that makes sense, but still, no excuses. Kings need to show up. This point of the season, you need to be playing your best hockey going into the postseason. So expect another big game for the Kings and hopefully 2 points to get back into second place in the Pacific Division. Kings Predators is a 5 p.m. LA time faceoff. You can see it on KCAL 9 locally. It's on ESPN Plus nationally, and you can hear the game on the 710 ESPN app. After the Kings game against the Predators, they'll hit the road for a mini 2-game road trip Monday in Minnesota and Thursday in Chicago. But focus right now on Saturday's game against Nashville. Hey, if you want to send an email for a future feedback show or anything else, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube as well. Stay connected with the show through social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. And for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Saturday's show, we will obviously recap Kings Predators shortly after the conclusion of that game. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk to you on Saturday. And as always, go Kings go.